Okay, good evening and welcome to Torah study this week, Parshas Eikev. And tonight is also a very special night. It is the 15th day of Menachem Av. Our sages tell us that there was no greater holiday like the 15th day of Av and Yom Kippur. There's a number of things that the Torah speaks about, the Talmud, but that's not the focus of tonight. Just one thing that we can take from the 15th day of Av. The 15th day of Av, the Rebbe explains, it represents the fact that the moon is a full moon. The moon represents the Jewish people. The full moon represents the strength and the power, meaning when we are at a level and a stage of fullness and completeness, and representing that we were shining the sun, the light of the sun, and that is especially so after the darkness. The 15th day we have every month, but here it is 15th day of Menachem Av, which of course on this month we have the Tisha B'Av, the darkness of the destruction, and seeing the light that comes after brings us clarity, brings us closeness to Hashem, and that brings us the real true joy. And in a way that ties in with the topic of today's discussion, the big picture. Your life really only centers around one thing. This is a lesson that the Rebbe will take out from the Rebbe's teaching about so many things that confuses us in life. Life is so complex and so difficult and so challenging, and so many details in our life. Every day we have other issues. And when you try to focus on doing the right thing, especially when you come from a place of darkness, spiritual darkness, and then you decide, okay, now let me go, let me start, let me see what is the right thing we need to do, what does Hashem want from us, and then you come across so many details. I have to do this way, so many changes in life, everything has to be calculated and done the way the Torah wants us. Mitzvahs carry so many details. And forget about the challenges. We have so many challenges in life and can get very frustrated. And here, what the Rebbe brings out from this Torah portion, from the name of the Torah portion, is a very, very encouraging message. And let's begin. What is the name of the Torah portion? The Torah begins with V'haya Eikev Tishma'un. The Torah portion, the name is Eikev. What does Eikev mean? Let's see inside. Beginning of the Torah portion, V'haya Eikev Tishma'un Eisa Mishpatim Ha'ele. It will be because you will heed these ordinances and keep them and perform them, that God will keep for you the covenant and the kindness that He swore to your forefathers. So this word, the name of the portion, Eikev, what is the Hebrew meaning of Eikev? So he translates it because you will listen to the laws and you will guard them, then God will keep the covenant. So the Maimonides explains this, Eikev k'may ba'avo, and it will be because you will heed these ordinances. Eikev means because. And Maimonides brings another example where this word we find in the Torah, that the word Eikev means because, is another instance of this word is in the verse Eikev, because Avram hearkened to my voice. So here what it says, that means you will, because you hearken to my voice, and the same thing the Torah says here, Vaya Eikev Tishmeru. So because you will listen, that means what is the point here? That the Torah says that you will listen and you will get all the good things, what the Torah promises, that Hashem will keep the covenant. And the question is a simple but very strong question, and that is this really the purpose of what we keep the Torah? Do we keep the Torah because of things that we want to be rewarded? Isn't the Torah a goal for itself? Isn't the Torah a goal for itself, to keep the Torah because this is it? So this is the focus of the question that we're going to focus today. The answer, in short, is that really the Torah is actually a means to a goal. What does that mean? There is really the higher goal. What is the higher goal? The higher goal is to connect to Hashem. To connect to Hashem. And the Torah, studying the Torah, doing the mitzvahs, leads us to this goal. And here's a quote from the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. He says, "It is appropriate for one to direct all their intentions solely towards the blessed Creator, without any other goals in mind. For any action, big or small, the purpose of every action should be to draw closer to the divine and remove all barriers between oneself and the Creator, until one is drawn to the divine like an iron to a magnet." That is basically it. That this is what we got to focus on. This is a story of Rabbi Sol Salanter, who was from the Muslim movement. He lived in the mid-1800s, and there was one time he was unable to go personally to the matzah bakery, before Passover. Before Passover, you go to the matzah bakery, and as Jews who are very careful and very particular to make sure the baking of the matzah for Passover is done in the most appropriate way, and they're very meticulous in making sure that the dough doesn't rise, and that there is so many things we are so careful with baking the matzah. And until today, there's always people go to the bakery by themselves. It's chaburas, what it's called. They're taking groups together, and they come and they bake the matzahs together, and they divide the responsibilities. People should watch over this and watch over that. That throughout the whole process of making the matzah should be done with all the details, very meticulously, all the details, what is necessary in the law. So one year that he couldn't go personally, and he asked his students what to go ahead and do it for him, to go to the bakery and watch the matzah. And the students asked him for guidance. They wanted to know what detail do they need to be really particular, to be very careful. So Rabbi Sol Salanta told him that the woman who needs the dough is a widow. And he says to his students, be careful. Be careful not to mistreat her. Don't say unkind words to her. Don't scream at her. You see, to focus on all the details of the law and forgetting about the importance of being careful with another human being or respecting another human being, especially a widow who just lost a husband, you're missing the whole point. So connecting, following the Torah, we must remember that number one, what is this all about? All the mitzvahs is about connecting to Hashem. So, of course, it sounds like very simple, but the truth is, it is not as simple, because we do find, as we will go read through some of the teachings of the Maharal, and we'll come to a deeper and better understanding of this concept. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of the Fathers, chapter 2, and the Mishnah says as follows. Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, would say, Torah study is beautiful when paired with the way of the world. For the toil of them both causes sin to be forgotten. And it says, ultimately, all Torah study that is not accompanied with work is destined to cease and to cause sin. Simply reading, that you can't just say, I'm going to study Torah and I'm going to forget about everything else, let somebody else support me. And we're not going into the details how yeshivas and kollels, that's a whole different story now. But in any case, what he says, that Torah has to have with derech eretz, with work. Then the Mishnah says something else. And it says, those who work for the community should do so for the sake of heaven. For the merit of their ancestors shall aid them, and their righteousness shall endure forever. And you, says God, I shall credit you with great reward, as if you have achieved it. So it seems to be here, there's two statements in the Mishnah, and it seems those two statements seem to have no connection whatsoever. And yet the Mishnah combines them together. And the Maharal comments on this, the Rabbi Yehuda Lowen, the Maharal of Prague, he comments on this. And what he says, he talks about the greatness of the Torah. That the Torah is an intellectual practice. It is something, and the intellect is universal. An idea is not placed in one location rather than another. Thoughts of Torah is universal. And that's what he combines the Torah with working for the community. Let's see what the Maharal says. It says, the Mishnah proceeds with those who work for the community. So the Mishnah juxtaposes the two items of Torah study and community service because they are similar to one another. How? So it says, Torah is unlike mitzvahs. For when one does a mitzvah, they aren't engaged in something broad. Neither is anything else relevant to it. So you engage in a mitzvah, you engage with this particular item, with this particular organ of the body. You put on tefillin on the arm. It's not something that is broad, connected with everything else around it. By contrast, this is, when a person engages in Torah, they acquire something broad. For intellectual matter is a broad, universal thing, not a specific thing, as we have explained a number of times. This, then, is what our sages say in the Jerusalem Talmud. One matter of the Torah is equivalent to the entire world. As the verse states, all things that may be desired are to be compared with her, are not to be compared with her. Chol chafetzim lo yishvu ba. The Proverbs. This demonstrates that Torah study is considered a broad, universal thing. And he goes on and explains, it says, this also explains the verse, Kineir mitzvah v'Torah oir. For a commandment is a candle, and the Torah is light. So he says, while doing a mitzvah is like a candle, it is only one specific candle. Candle is something in a physical object, and it's one and not two candles. But Torah is analogous to light. Light cannot be broken down into particulars, for it is abstract and indivisible. So this says the Maharal, this is the idea. Torah study is something that is broad, it is throughout, it's not divisible, it's like light, it's everywhere. Versus the mitzvahs, that is in one particular place, each mitzvah with something else. And in that light, he also explains what our sages tell us about Yaakov Avinu. The story when Yaakov went on the way to Lavan, he stopped in the place and he lied down. It was in the place in the Hara Maria, in Jerusalem. He lied down and he saw in the dream. And what did he do? He lied down. It says, "Vayikach me'avnei hamakam." He took from the place, the rocks of the place, and he slept in that place. And Yaakov arrived at the place, says the Torah, and lodged there because the sun had set. And he took some of the stones of the place and placed them at his head. And he lay down in that place. So later on, the Torah says, Vayikach etza even asher sam merashotov, and he took the stone that he put under his head. Here it says he took stones and put them around. So Rashi explains, and he placed them at his head. He arranged them in the form of a drain pipe around his head because he feared the wild beasts. There's some mystical explanations about it, but that's not for now. So the stones started quarreling. They started fighting with one another. One said, "Let the righteous man lay his head on me." And another one said, "Let him lay his head on me." Immediately, the Holy One, blessed be He, made them into one stone. This is why it is stated that, and he took the stone in the singular that he had placed at his head. So what exactly was the stone fighting about? And why did they become one? What just happened? So the Maharal explains. He says, we must understand, why did the stones wish for the righteous one to rest his head on them? Says the Maharal, Yaakov's head housed his holy and distinct soul. And it therefore deserved only one singular item as befitting any intellectual matter. Intellect relates to all details and specifics in one monolithic way. It doesn't splinter and associate partially with this and partially with that. If that would be the case, it would render the intellect divided, something that doesn't exist in the universe of intellect. There is only one hegemony in that world. And so there is only one, and that's why the stones were fighting, as they were many disparate entities vying to be under his head. For something intellectual like Yaakov's head is associated with unity, not multiplicity. Inasmuch as there were many stones, there was this discord. But when it comes to other physical matters, there is plenty of multiplicity. For physicality is indeed abundant. That is why God fused the stones into one, for intellect associates to many details as if they were one. Thus, they fused and combined underneath Yaakov's head. So that's the idea. What is the Maharal saying? When you're talking about an intellectual idea, it's not divisible. When you're saying 2 plus 2 equals 1, it is true in every area. It is true in 2 items. 2 stones plus 2 stones equals 1. It is true in feelings. If you have 2 feelings and 2 feelings, I said 2 plus 2 equals 1. I'm quite tired. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And that is in every area. In every area. Ideas. 2 ideas and 2 ideas. The concept is true in everywhere. So that's why he explains that the mitzvahs are more details. Physicality is more detailed. Intellect is more unified. If you go further, it is also godly, more godly, not as distant. And of course, we're going to talk about it soon, what it means regarding mitzvahs. Because of course, mitzvahs, after all, is godly as well. But the point it brings out is that there is something that is more unified, and that is the Torah, the intellect. And this is why he says this is connected, the Torah study is connected with the concept of tzarchei tzibur, asking with the community, working with the community, as the Mishnah juxtaposed these 2 things, because they're also about unity, about oneness, about uniting. So physicality is ultimately fragmented and divided, whereas true unity only exists within the realm of Hashem. And that's what the Maharal continues. And he says as follows. He says, we have explained many times in this work that fragmentation and multiplicity are physical phenomena, whereas unity is a godly thing. This multiplicity is represented in the letters Hey, in the letter Hey. It's interesting. We learned this today in the Tanya. that it says, Ki beko Hashem tzur olamim, Yud K, the Yud and the Hey. It says God created the world to come with the letter Yud, and He created this world with the letter Hey. It says the Maharal here, as it has the letter Hey has in it, this is the Hey, the letter Hey has in it a Daled, and on the top you have a Yud, on the bottom you have here, you have a Yud, like a Yud, a Daled and a Yud. What does this represent? Says the Maharal, the letter Daled plus a small Yud. The numerical value of Daled is 4, representative of the 4 directions of this world. And the small Yud is the middle, singular item that ties them all together. That's why God created this world with the letter Hey. For this world has much fragmentation, and yet it is one world. For all of that multiplicity is the product of the one God. We explained it in much more depth in today's and yesterday's Tanya class, that ultimately everything starts from the Yud, from the Chachma, from the one God. However, the world to come is entirely a world of God's unity. And thus, it is created with the letter Yud. So here's the question. What we see from here, godliness is unity. Multiplicity suggests something that is distant from Hashem. And here's the question. When we come to life, when it comes to the way the Torah wants us to live our life, there seems to be a multiplicity of mitzvahs. So many details and so many things that seem to be a vast burden. And the question is, where is the unity? Where is the cosmic significance of the entire, everything we do, all the mitzvahs together? Our sages specifically tell us, when it comes to mitzvahs, we have to focus on each mitzvah. And each mitzvah, the detail is important. So if the window of Judaism is limited to observing a bunch of laws, one can quickly get lost in the details and fail to appreciate how global it is, how cosmic it really is. And I find it a lot when it comes to people who, again, when we're talking about people who are beginners, they start to take up on, they're being told, oh, take this mitzvah, that mitzvah, this mitzvah. How big is this esrog and the lulav and the matzah and everything is so many details, and you can get lost in the details. And yes, sages tell us how it is important, every detail, every mitzvah. As this is a Tosfos in Mayat Katan that says the reason why we're not supposed to mix 2 mitzvahs together is because a person must be focused entirely on one mitzvah and not be distracted with another. So what's happening here? Where's the big picture? This can really become very exhausting when you're focusing on so many details. Where's the big idea, the big picture? What we understood from the Maharal is that the Torah study qualifies as something big. What about everything else? So here comes a teaching from the Rebbe that we discussed in the past. And that is the mitzvah. What is a mitzvah? What is a commandment? A mitzvah in Aramaic is comes from the word tzavta. Tzavta means connecting. A mitzvah is a relationship that we have with Hashem. Here's the words of the Rebbe. The word mitzvah is related to the Aramaic word tzavta, meaning connection. A person who performs a mitzvah forges a connection with the essence of God, with the one who gives that command. This is the meaning of the teaching of the sages, that the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Schar mitzvah mitzvah. The mitzvah itself is the reward of the mitzvah. The reward for mitzvah is the connection it forges with God himself. And it brings a beautiful analogy. And again, we mentioned this analogy in the past. It says a simple person feels innately humble, utterly insignificant before the wisdom and greatness of a sage. Similarly, from the sage's perspective, he hardly considers the simple person a human being. Now, the Rebbe clarifies. He says, not that he belittles him or rejects him, heaven forbid. That would be an undesirable quality. The Rebbe's words is much stronger. He says it's midara. It's a bad characteristic. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact. It says, rather it appears to him that he has no connection or relationship with him at all. If a person like that lives his life is an intellect, take Einstein, for example, his world is a world of intellect. If a person does not share this with him, that person doesn't exist in his world. And what happens? What happens if Mr. Einstein, for example, will need a favor? Will need to get the letter to the post office. And will say this to his neighbor that he never spoke to, he never realized that he never felt any connection with him. Says, can you do me a favor? Can you take this letter and put it in the post office? All of a sudden, that created a connection between the two. The person now feels significant in his own eyes and in the eyes of the scholar, of the sage. So in the Rebbe's words, the Rebbe continues, he says, however, when the sage tells the simple person to do something for him, that command establishes the identity of the simple person. Of course, and again, a human being is a human being, of course. When it comes to treat the person as a human being, it will definitely help him and do everything for him. But that's not the point. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in his world, that simple person. His world is a world of knowledge, a world of intellect. When he needs something from him, now this established the identity of the simple person. First of all, says the Rebbe, it makes him feel significant, for he can fulfill the sage's command. And he was the one whom the sage commanded to do something. Likewise, he becomes significant in the eyes of the sage, who speaks to him and gives him the command. Moreover, the command unites the prominent and lofty sage with this simplest of people. And the analog with regards to doing a mitzvah is self-explanatory, says the Rebbe. That's the mitzvah. That's what happens when we do a mitzvah, the connection with God, which is obviously the distance between us and God is much more than the distance between the greatest sage and the simple person. Moreover, says the Rebbe, it is obviously immaterial whether the command is for a great and lofty matter or a small and simple one. It doesn't matter. Is the mitzvah to go keep Shabbos? Is the mitzvah to go help people? Or is the mitzvah to go and do a simple thing? Simple mitzvah. The way you dress, the way you tie your shoes, simple things, small things. So this, says the Rebbe, this is what our parsha, the name of the parsha, tells us. Eikev, because. V'aya Eikev tishmel. Like we said, the Eikev is a word which is rarely used. And here the Torah says, Eikev tishmel, because you shall listen. Meaning that there are mitzvahs, there is a sake, there is the sake of why we do the mitzvahs. The mitzvah has a certain purpose. Because, and the purpose is, the mitzvah is supposed to connect you with the Eibishter. A mitzvah might be one specific action, but it's for something greater, a bigger picture, namely that connection with God. As the Rebbe continues, when a Jew engages in Torah study, they must invest energy and be excited about studying and understanding it. Yes, Torah study is with your intellect, and you're excited about understanding it. But that's not all. That's not the real Torah study. It says, but together with that, they must remember that the purpose and the goal of Torah study is to connect and unite with God, the giver of the Torah. This is the depth of the Talmudic idea of reciting a blessing before the Torah study. Before a Jew learns Torah, the first step is to connect with the giver of the Torah. That's what we say the brachas. You cannot study Torah before you say the blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shebachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Hashem noten haTorah. Thanking Hashem for choosing us and giving us the Torah. So doing that infuses their study with the appreciation that this is God's Torah and that it is a medium to connect with Him. And the same is true, says the Rebbe, with observing mitzvahs. A Jew's regular practice of mitzvah observance must be saturated with the appreciation that a mitzvah is about connecting with God, the one who instructed the mitzvah. And this is the overall message of our parsha, the parsha's name, Eikev, because, for the sake of. That's what it means, Eikev. It is because of that. This word highlights the idea that following a life of Torah and mitzvahs is in fact a reason, a medium for something else. It is a medium for something else. It underscores that the purpose of it all is to connect to God, the one who gave us the Torah and instructed the mitzvahs. It was interesting in the Rambam, in the Maimonides, we do find the message the Rambam gives us. And if you read the Rambam, it seems to be saying two separate things. But as the Rebbe explains, really the Rambam says that same, very, very same thing. The Maimonides says as follows: the good that is hidden for the righteous is the life of the world to come. What then is the meaning of the statement made throughout the entire Torah? If you observe the Torah laws, you will acquire such and such. Says the Maimonides in the Hilchas Tshuva, the laws of Teshuvah. It says those benefits are not the ultimate reward. And they're not the ultimate reward for the mitzvahs. The Torah says if you do in if you follow the Torah, you'll get this and this. I will give you the rain in time, I will give you all the material things in time. Says the Maimonides, those benefits are not the ultimate reward for the mitzvahs. Rather, here's how it works, says the Rambam. God gave us this Torah, which is a tree of life. Whoever fulfills what is written within it and comprehends it with complete and proper knowledge will merit to the world to come. Will merit the world to come. A person merits a portion of the world to come according to the magnitude of the deeds and the extent of the knowledge. That's what, again, we explained 2 days ago in Tanya. Now, what is Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden? It is what you created with your own actions, with your own study, with your own mitzvahs. You created that awareness of God. Continues the Rambam. In addition, we are promised by the Torah that if we fulfill it with joy and good spirit and meditate on its wisdom at all times, God will remove all obstacles that prevent us from fulfilling it. For example, sickness, war, famine, and the like. Similarly, God will grant us all the good that will reinforce our performance of the Torah, such as plenty, peace, and abundance of silver and gold, so that we need not be involved throughout all our days in matters required by the body, but rather will sit unburdened and be able to study wisdom and perform mitzvahs and thus merit the world to come. So it seems like, what is the Rambam saying? On the one hand, the material reward is not the ultimate reward. There are material things is just like working conditions. Hashem says, you do your job, I'll do mine. Of course, we're not going into the details. Sometimes we don't understand God's ways, but in general, that's what it is. If God says this is what it is. When we commit ourselves completely to Torah, somehow things work out. But in the same time, says the Rambam, that this is not the ultimate reward. What is the reward? Ultimate reward is in the world to come. But this is on the one hand, but this seems to be contradicting a little bit at the first glance what the Rambam says elsewhere. What the Rambam says in the next text, says the Rambam, from Hilchos Teshuvah, says a person should not say, I will fulfill the mitzvahs of the Torah and occupy myself in its wisdom in order to receive all the blessings that are contained within it, or in order to merit the life of the world to come. One should not say that this is why I should do the mitzvahs, in order to merit the world to come. It is not fitting to serve God in this manner. Rather, one should serve God out of love, engaging in Torah and mitzvahs, and walking in the paths of wisdom for no ulterior motive, not because of fear that evil will occur, nor in order to acquire benefit. Rather, they do what is true because it is true. What does the proper love look like? It is loving God so much and with such passion that one feels as if their very soul is bound up with this love. it's so strong. The person becomes obsessed with it. So here the Rambam says, no, that you shouldn't serve Hashem for the purpose of earning the world to come. Just do the truth because it is truth. Because you are in love with Hashem. But the truth is, a deeper thinking that this is not a contradiction. Because if you really truly understand what is the world to come, that the world to come, it's not a kind of utopia. You live in a nice paradise with all kind of goods that you get. The world to come is to really connect with Hashem. That is the ultimate world to come. So that is really the true love that you seek. You seek to connect with Hashem. Ultimately, what is the mitzvah all about? The mitzvah, doing a mitzvah, is another way of building the relationship that we want to have with Hashem and that Hashem wants to have with us. He gives us all of these mitzvahs because He wants the relationship with us. So, parents with children. Parents want to have children. Why? They invest in children. Why do they invest in children? Because they want to see that they perform good, get good marks. They're having children because they need somebody to help them. Well, in some cases, the answer, unfortunately, would be yes. But this is not really the way it's supposed to be. In the most cases, in a normal case, what is a relationship with a child? You want that relationship. You want the relationship with a spouse. Do you want the spouse because you want to have a body to go and have a drink together or something? You want the relationship. You want the connection. So all the details, what we do, the focus is one thing. So what is the one thing? The one thing is the relationship that this creates with Hashem. So if we look at the details, so many details, and say, oh, you have to do this and have to do that, and you look at it as a bunch of details, so many details, yes, it can get exhausting and it can get tiring and frustrating. If I don't do this, and then I'm missing here. But if you look at each and every mitzvah as part of the connection with Hashem, the part that Hashem commanded us, and here yet another opportunity that I can create a connection with Hashem. Just like a child. You play ball with a child. You're reading him stories. Everything you do with a child is yet creating another connection, another relationship, and strengthens the bond that you have with the child. Hashem wants to have that bond with us. And finally, the Rebbe really brings out the point that not only is every mitzvah a chance to connect with Hashem, but really every situation in life. So when a person has a plan, that I planned out my life, I want to do one thing, I'm getting a career, I'm going to raise my children this way, everything is planned out for me. And I have a clear vision what I want to do with my life. And then things blow up in your face. God forbid there's illness. God forbid, sometimes you have to move for whatever reason. You have all kind of turmoil that happens, and you say to yourself, how much can I handle? But if you know, and if you think you understand that really every detail in the world is part of the one big picture, is part of the big picture which Hashem plans for you, then you know that in every detail, in every day, in every moment in your life, in every situation in your life, you can serve Hashem. You can serve God. You just have to keep your mind open. And you have to ask yourself, what does God want from me right now? Sometimes it can take some time. But if you ask yourself this question, if this is the way you think, you're going to look for the ways that this is your situation, that God placed you here, is all the same thing. It's all part of one big picture. And you know what? That brings peace and tranquility. Because you know you're not off the track. You're on God's track. And if you're on God's track, you're going with certainty, you're going with confidence that you're doing the right thing no matter what happens. But you know that you are on God's track. God is leading you. And you know what? When you're working like this, and you're working in a way that you know you're doing the right things, you're going to be much more successful. Because when you're confused, you're unsure, you don't know what's happening, everything is mixed up and everything is messed up. But if you know you're on a certain track that God leads you, and that is to serve Hashem no matter what and no matter when, you're going to be peaceful, you're going to be less heart attacks, God forbid, and it's going to be more peaceful and more successful. And this is what the Rebbe says in the next text. To explain in simple human terms, when a person isn't well aware of the purpose in life, which in our case is to serve God, they cannot be truly at peace. After all, the fluctuation of time and space, along with the millions of tiny details in a person's life, will cause them to constantly feel splintered and torn apart. But when a person appreciates the purpose and the goal that lies within all those details, it brings an inner peace that transcends the details and fluctuations of life. Subsequently, it brings us to self-enhancement. It is obvious when a person is at peace, an inner existential peace, it enhances their life. To add, says the Rebbe, such peace doesn't only bring personal fulfillment, it also enhances everything they do, bringing greater success and peace to the world at large, bringing the discussion back to the Torah. Says the Rebbe, when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, the purpose of creation was finally exposed. That the Jewish people should receive the Torah and then improve the entire world by encouraging humanity to observe the 7 Noahide laws, thereby transforming the universe into a home for God. That's why it says, Eretz Yara Veshakata, the land was trembling, and then it became calm. It was trembling until the Jewish people received the Torah, when everything was chaos. But once the God gave the Torah, and we received the Torah, we received the clarity. Now we are here to serve Hashem. We are here to serve God with our mitzvahs. We are here to enlighten the entire world, that the world should keep the 7 Noahide laws, which God instructed for every single human being. Those are the things that brings peace, brings tranquility to our life. Let us hope that this will happen soon with the coming of Mashiach, and with the points, the key points that we read here. The Torah, number one, Torah implies that a life of Torah study and mitzvah observance is for the sake of something. And point number two, intellect is a broad and global, as it is indivisible. In general, the more spiritual something is, the more singular and united it is. multiplicity and fragmentation as symptoms of physicality. Point number 3, as an intellectual pursuit, Torah is broader and grander than a mitzvah, with a specific physical action. But ultimately, the mitzvah is what? We need to bring that broader concept of godliness even into the physical world. That's why all the details of the mitzvah. Number 4, but underneath the specifics of every mitzvah is a larger picture, a connection with God. Point number 5, in truth, every mitzvah, all of Judaism, is indeed for the sake of something, that connection and relationship with God. And finally, number 6, is this connection with God is the singular idea and force that binds all the disparate elements of life together, offering those who appreciate this truth tremendous existential peace. What a powerful message we have here. Let us hope we will do it. We'll see, as the Torah promises, we'll have the coming of Mashiach very soon. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. All the best. Shavua Tov.